So it's gonna be a little bit different, but it's been a minute, so I'm really just trying to get my time in. Oh, hold on. We ain't all the way ready. Okay. Hi, welcome to Ascension Books and Conversations. My name is Sharice Lovely from Collective Light, and I got about 20 minutes with y'all to read this book, and I'm super slacking on this video. Retrograde has been retrograding like crazy. It's been such a busy month, and I can't believe it's already the 10th. So we're just trying to get those days in and get as many chapters in as we can. So we're just gonna get right into it. I'll do my best not to reflect too long. And yeah, if you got your PDF pulled up, go ahead and pull yours up. You can always click the link below. It has it sectioned out for you. We're on chapter 65 together, and we're getting there. We're getting into this book, so we're doing great. We are at section. This is when the Roman numerals start to get. I gotta go back to my old knowledge of the Roman numerals. It is section 14, I believe. Please correct me if I'm wrong. None. The Christine Ministry of Jesus, Introductory Epic. Chapter 65. Jesus goes to the wilderness for self-examination, where he remains 40 days. Is subjected to 3 temptations. He overcomes, returns to the camps of Jolan, and begins teaching. So we're now at a point where Jesus is beginning his ministry. He was initiated, he was deemed the Christ, and now he is going back out into his world, his reality, his people, to share all of the wisdom and knowledge that he had gained. Verse 1. The harbinger had paved the way. John. The Logos had been introduced to men as love made manifest. Jesus. And he must now begin his Christine ministry. And he went forth into the wilderness to be alone with God, that he might look into his inner heart, and note its strength and worthiness. And with himself he talked. He said, My lower self is strong. By many ties I am bound down to carnal life. Have I the strength to overcome and give my life a willing sacrifice for men? When I shall stand before the face of men, and they demand a proof of my messiahship, what will I say? And then the tempter came and said, If you be Son of God, command these stones to turn to bread. And Jesus said, Who is it that demands a test? It is no sign that one is Son of God, because he does a miracle. The devils can do mighty things. Did not the black magicians do great things before the pharaohs? My words and deeds in all the walks of life shall be the proof of my messiahship. And then the tempter said, If you will go into Jerusalem, and from the temple pinnacle cast down yourself to earth, the people will believe that you are the Messiah sent from God. This you can surely do, for did not David say, He gives his angels charge concerning you, and with their will they uphold, lest you should fall? And Jesus said, I may not tempt the Lord my God. And then the tempter said, Look forth upon the world. Behold its honors and its fame. Behold its pleasures and its wealth. If you will give your life for these, they shall be yours. But Jesus said, Away from me all tempting thoughts. My heart is fixed. I spurn this carnal self with all its vain ambition and its pride. For 40 days did Jesus wrestle with his carnal self. His higher self prevailed. He then was hungry, but his friends had found him, and they ministered to him. Then Jesus left the wilderness, and in the consciousness of holy breath, he came unto the camps of John and taught. Chapter 65. Oh, I don't think I can see a chat in here. If you're in here, this is my first time going live on my phone. So I'm like, if there's a chat, I definitely don't see it. Sorry. But please leave any reflections in the comments, whether you're listening to this now or later. Chapter 65 is pretty straightforward. If you have read the King James Bible before, then you have probably a familiarity of this interaction between Jesus and what some like to say is Satan, some say is, as they describe him here, as the tempter. And the tempter is pretty much tempting Jesus back into his carnal self, so that he wrestles with his higher and lower self in order to, because the tempter is trying to get him to prove himself as the Messiah, when he actually prayed and asked, what am I supposed to do, or what am I supposed to say when the people demand that proof? And the tempter was trying to give that answer, but it wasn't the truth. It was illusionary. And Jesus saw through that, and he prevailed through listening to his higher self. Beautiful. Then we'll move on to chapter 66. 6 of John's disciples follow Jesus and become his disciples. He teaches them, they sit in the silence. Verse 1. Among the followers of John were many men from Galilee. The most devout were Andrew, Simon, James, and John, with Philip and his brother Bethsaida. One day, as Andrew, Philip, and son of Zebedee were talking with the harbinger, the Logos came, and John exclaimed, "Behold, the Christ." And then the 3 disciples followed Jesus, and he asked, "What do you seek?" And the disciples asked, "Where do you live?" And Jesus answered, "Come and see." And Andrew called his brother Simon, saying, "Come with me, for I have found the Christ." When Jesus looked in Simon's face, he said, "Behold a rock, and Peter is your name." And Philip found Nathanael sitting by a tree and said, "My brother, come with me, for I have found the Christ. In Nazareth he abides." Nathanael said, "Can anything of good come out of Nazareth?" And Philip answered, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael come, he said, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no guile." Nathanael said, "How can you speak about me thus?" And Jesus said, "I saw you as you sat beneath the fig tree over there, before your brother called." Nathanael lifted up his hands and said, "This surely is the Christ, the King, for whom the harbinger has often testified." And John went forth and found his brother James and brought him to the Christ. The 6 disciples went with Jesus to the place where he abode. And Peter said, "We long have sought for Christ. We came from Galilee to John. We thought that he was Christ. But he confessed to us that he was not, that he was but the harbinger sent forth to clear the way and make the pathway easy for the coming King. And when you came, he said, 'Behold, the Christ.' And we would gladly follow where you go. Lord, tell us what to do." And Jesus said, "The foxes of the earth have homes, the birds have nests. I have no place to lay my head. He who would follow me must give up all cravings of the self and lose his life in saving life. I come to save the lost. Man is saved when he is rescued from himself. But men are slow to comprehend this doctrine of the Christ." And Peter said, "I cannot speak for any other man, but for myself I speak. I will leave all and follow where you lead." And then the others spoke and said, "You have the words of truth. You came from God, and if we follow in your footsteps, we cannot miss the way." Then Jesus and the 6 disciples sat a long, long time in silent thought. Chapter 66. Again, we are in his ministry, so there will be a lot of familiarity between this story and the King James Version, because same story. But here, a difference that I noticed was verse 20, where he said, "I come to save the lost, and man is saved when he is rescued from himself. But men are slow to comprehend this doctrine of the Christ." And I think that's so interesting because, what Jesus saving us, everybody's perspective of that is their own. And in terms of being saved, some do believe that it is a physical saving, that it is a man coming down and saving us as he came at this time, sharing his ministry. But he did share his ministry, and he did share already how to attain Christ consciousness in this life. And he even mentions that we miss a lot of these lessons. But it comes down to rescuing yourself from yourself. And he even went through those trials himself, because he went through the initiation of the 7 rites in order to become the Christ. And all of those tests were about his carnal self and was about the struggles of being in this human experience. And so he did that to show us that he could persevere past the carnal self through choices that he made and did that as an example for us to be able to attain the same thing. And so I think this is a very distinct difference than what we're taught in regards to being saved by Jesus, because it wasn't that this one individual is going to come and save humanity. It's about being an example of how we can do that for ourselves. And if we really were to all do that on a collective level, then we would save humanity, if that makes sense. Cool. So we're going to move on to the next chapter. I don't think there was anything else. I did just want to reflect, though. This chapter is the same story that I used as an example in the very first video for this series and this book when I was explaining the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, because I wanted to explain how the person who received this book, or who wrote this book, received it through accessing the Akashic records through astral travel, and using the example from the Bible of, what astral travel kind of looked like. And I used this story as an example, and I think it's funny that it came back in here because I used the story from the King James Version, and now it's here again. So I just want to point that out. If you haven't seen the first video talking about where this book come from and about the author, feel free to go back. It's in the description box for you too. All right, we're going to move on to chapter 67. I got about 5 more minutes with y'all. Okay. Chapter 67. Jesus visits John at the Jordan, delivers his first Christine address to the people. The address: he goes with his disciples to Bethany. Verse 1. Now on the morrow, Jesus came again and stood with John beside the ford. And John prevailed on him to speak, and standing forth he said, "You, men of Israel, hear, the kingdom is at hand. Behold, the great keeper of the age stands in your midst, and with the spirit of Elijah he has come. Behold, for he has turned the key, the mighty gates fly wide, and all who will may greet the king. Behold, these multitudes of women, children, men, they throng the avenues, they crowd the outer courts. Each seems to be intent to be the first to meet the king. Behold, the censer comes and calls. Whoever will may come, but he who comes must will to prune himself of every evil thought, must overcome desire to gratify the lower self, must give his life to save the lost. The nearer to the kingdom gate you come, more spacious is the room, the multitudes have gone. If men could come unto the kingdom with their carnal thoughts, their passions and desires, there scarcely would be room for all. But when they cannot take these through the narrow gate, they turn away. The few are ready to go in and see the king. Behold, John is a mighty fisher, fishing for the souls of men. He throws his great net out into the sea of human life. He draws it in, and it is full. And what a medley catch! A catch of crabs and lobsters, sharks and creeping things, with now and then a fish of better kind. Behold, the thousands come to hear the wild man of the hills. They come in crowds, that he may wash them in the crystal flood, and with their lips they do confess their sins. But when the morrow comes, we find them in their haunts of vice again, reviling John and cursing God, and heaping insults on the king. But blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see the king. And blessed are the strong in heart, for they shall not be cast about by every wind that blows. But while the fickle and the thoughtless have gone back to Egypt, land for leeks and carnal herbs to satisfy their appetites, the pure in heart have found the king. But even those whose faith is weak, and who are not but carnal manifests, will someday come again and enter in with joy to see the king. O men of Israel, take heed to what this prophet has to say. Be strong in mind, be pure in heart, be vigilant in helpfulness. The kingdom is at hand. When Jesus had thus said, he went his way, and with his 6 disciples came to Bethany, and they abode with Lazarus many days. Chapter 67. Pretty much he's ministering, straying away from those carnal thoughts. And a way for us to save each other is to be that example of prevailing past our carnal thoughts, our carnal actions, our carnal habits, talks about the narrow path. If you've never heard of that, in the Bible it says that the narrow path is the way to the kingdom, pretty much, because that is the way that many do not choose to take. But I think that right now we're in a time which is different, and many of us are really trying to shift into being better, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. And I think that's why these stories are being revisited in a different light, because it's not about having shame if you're not in these spaces, but it's just about knowing that you have a choice and you have the power to make that choice. And we all have that ability, like equally. So yeah, I gotta go. So I'm gonna leave it here, but please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope to see y'all soon again, because I'm not trying to wait another 10 days to continue with this chapter. So I'll see you soon, and sending you all so much love this week. All right, peace. Oh, how do you end this though? Let's see. Da, 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 da. How do you end on the phone? Oh, there you go. Bye.